welcome back to Simulated Heaven. I wanted to make another video that kind of runs alongside the video that I made recently about YouTube, and this video I want to call Why I Don't Want to Be a Game Developer in 2018 or something along those lines anyway. I'm going to specifically talk about the PC market and Steam, because Steam is the biggest marketplace for PC games, and that is what I usually play, so that is kind of where I've seen this happen. It might be happening on consoles, I'm really not sure. Maybe it's not to the same extent. But what I'm seeing on the PC is a pretty crazy change in the environment that the game developers are working with, and I feel sorry for a lot of them because it must be incredibly hard. What I feel is happening is that these days in the modern world, it's just way too easy for someone to release a game. Years ago, like when I was a kid with my first computers, there was only a limited amount of games out there because it used to cost a lot of money for someone to make a good game and to have that game sent around all of the game shops and things like that. If you know what I mean, there was more of a cost to it. It was harder. So way back then, you only had a very limited amount of games you could choose from. And I only used to own quite a limited amount of games. And I used to find that most of the games I owned, I would have played for at least a few hours, right? Then fast forward to these days, right? I just feel it's way too easy for people to release a game. Literally hundreds and hundreds of games are released on Steam pretty much every day, right? And it's getting worse and worse. So most of us gamers just have a crazy backlog of games. I've actually started saying to myself that I'm trying not to buy more games because I have hundreds of games in my Steam account which I've not even installed. I've not even really played them for more than half an hour, right? So I'm sure that there's a lot of other people that feel like this. So first of all, I feel like there's a crazy amount of games, which means that people are not feeling that they need to buy so many games. And the other thing is that because there's so many games that are coming out, the amount of time that a game is highlighted, that a game has exposure, has been completely cut down. Because even if a game is really popular, it will come out, people will buy it, people will play it, and then very quickly they'll just move on to the next big shiny thing. So this whole situation is affecting all of the developers, even the AAA, the high-end guys. But the thing that really hurts me is that I feel that the kind of indie, small developers are just getting hurt so much. And it's almost like a lottery whether your game is going to be a commercial success or not. Okay, first of all, I kind of want to talk about the AAA guys first. Now, the thing is with them is it costs a lot of money for you to make a AAA game. And I feel like the games that in the past, that would have been very successful, these days it's not a guarantee of success, right? Because there's just so many games out there. The market is so saturated in most of the areas, most of the genres, that unless your game is at the absolute apex, there's quite a chance it's not going to do very well. And even if it is at the apex, like I said, the amount of time it's at the top is going to be greatly reduced because everyone's just going to move on to the next big thing. There are some exceptions, of course, but broadly speaking, this is what I can see. Now, of course, I'm going to talk about a couple of very well-known flops recently, as you can see on the screen, we have Battleborn and also Lawbreakers. These are great examples of very high-end AAA games that had a lot of money pumped into them. If these games had come out, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago, they would have been massive. But in this market, with this many games, this much competition, with the short attention span of gamers these days, I feel both of these games basically flopped hard, right? You can see right now, Battleborn has a 24-hour peak of 65 people, only 65. And they had to go free to play, they had to do so much stuff, and yet they're still only at this kind of level. The game just basically nosedive. Lawbreakers, this is a very famous one because this was supposed to be a massive franchise that would last a long time. The game hasn't been out that long, maybe half a year, something like that, and already you can see the 24-hour peak is 36. It's crazy. Years ago, I would never have seen this, a AAA shooter game that has basically tanked this fast. I would never have expected that. But these days, I feel like this is the market. And it even affects the AAA guys right at the top, right? And you can also see this in the way that games, I feel, are going on sale so fast. So, one example I found here on Steam, this game here, Wolfenstein 2, was a big success. People loved it. It's only been out since the end of October, and look, it's already half price on Steam. Right? You would never have seen that in the past. Never. And we can see, these are some examples that maybe not the best example. Shadow of War, already 40% off. It hasn't been out that long. Dirt 4, 60% off. Again, hasn't really been out that long. Project Cars 2, 40% off. It isn't on this list, but I saw the new Assassin's Creed Origins heavily discounted, way more than I would have expected, way earlier than I would have expected. Even a game like that had across the board critical success, the players seem to love it as well. Even a game like that is getting discounted way faster than I would have expected in the past, right? And I just think that there's a lot of developers that are panicking, that they have this really big idea for a game that in the past would have been ultra successful. They put it out there and they see, it's not actually getting the traction they would expect, and they panic and they then start to discount. This is with the AAAs, but it's actually even worse with the indie games. I feel really sorry for indie game developers. And, don't get me wrong, there are some that are still earning a lot of money, right? But the amount of success compared with the amount of failures, I feel, is getting so much less, right? It's like an ocean of games out there, and your game is just a drop in the ocean. And it's so hard for you to get any kind of traction in a market like this, right? So, for me, there have been some indie games that I think are amazing that just don't get any kind of traction. One example is this game, Dex. I only found out about this game because one of my friends on Steam had played this game. I saw that, I clicked on it, and I was like, this game is amazing. Basically, it's like a 2D RPG game, and it's amazing. It's been made so well, right? Yet, this game you can see all-time peak only 211, and I reckon a lot of people that have this game only bought it when it was heavily discounted. I've seen this game for like, you know, hardly anything being heavily discounted, right? So I think even these numbers are quite inflated, right? Another game, Owlboy. Now, this game was critically acclaimed. People said it was amazing. And I do think it did have a fair amount of success. But again, I saw this game got heavily discounted way faster than I would have expected. And I feel like in this day and age, it didn't get anywhere near the amount of traction that it would have got several years ago before this whole crazy over-saturation of the gaming market happened, right? But this last example, for me, is the worst example. The absolute worst example. This game, Divide, it came out, and this game looks amazing. The guys that made this game spent years, and they poured a lot of love and effort into this game. I'm not saying it's a perfect game, but it's a really cool game, right? They're not even trying to sell it for a high price. And yet, this game has got 2 user reviews. It's been out since the 18th of November, and it's got 2 user reviews. It's crazy, really crazy. I mean, one thing I would say is that they did release the game on Steam, and you have to have a controller in order to play the game. But still, you know, there are many examples of this where you get an indie game that's really cool that just gets lost, right? Many people won't have even heard of this game. If you say to someone, you know, about a game, an indie game usually that you really love, most people would say, what is that? You know, and I've found games that I absolutely adore that I'd never heard of, and the only reason that I found out about the game is because someone said to me, oh, have you ever seen this game? You know, or I see that someone else has this game in their Steam account. It's crazy. So, this is why I wouldn't want to be a game developer in 2018. And, you know, there are people that are talking about that the gaming market is going to be, you know, is going to like implode in the future. I don't really know if that's going to happen, but for me, it's just a very rough market. Okay guys, so thank you for watching this video, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.